Everyone hits a bump in the road. The question becomes, what do you do with it? Bump in the Road is a podcast, an online magazine, and event center. Join us as we follow people through and beyond their bump in the road. Be moved and inspired. Check us out at bumpintheroad.us. Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Nancy Novak is a psychologist and one of the special people who really makes a difference. She's the founder of nancyslist.org, which she says is her love letter to the universe. Nancy's List grew out of Nancy's own experience with ovarian cancer. She was given a 2 to 3% chance of survival, and cancer proved to be a pivot point in her life. On her website, she writes, "For me, cancer changed everything. It generated my growth. It taught me the essence of gratitude. It deepened my sense of compassion. It defined my calling and refined my purpose. It gave me the opportunity to offer hope to those who have lost theirs. I found my courage and resilience. I embrace the generosity of strangers." Please welcome Nancy Novak. Nancy, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, give us a little bit of background on your story.
Hi, my name is Nancy Novak. I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in family practice. I practiced in the San Francisco Bay Area until I moved to Austin about 6 years ago. And I have focused my life on developing Nancy's List, which is a nonprofit serving those who are living with cancer and those who love and care for them. I was diagnosed in 2004, 17 years ago, with stage 4 ovarian, which had metastasized into my liver. And that's why it's called stage 4, because that's a vital organ. I thought I had appendicitis. On April 29th of 2004, I had pain in the right side of my belly that didn't go away. And I went to my internist who examined me and immediately sent me for a CT scan. I knew nothing about cancer and I knew nothing about a CT scan. So it seemed like a very long time. She called me back in and said, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" And I said, "The good news." She said, "You don't have appendicitis." I said, "Oh, wow. All right. Okay. Terrific." And she said, "Ready for the bad news?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You have stage 4 ovarian cancer and your liver is 2 times its appropriate size. It's like a small watermelon. Oh my God. Your right ovary is the size of a grapefruit." Did anybody else notice how they talk about tumors in the size of fruit? Anyway, I said 2 sort of remarkable things. Thank goodness it's not appendicitis. What's stage 5? So, which is the title of my next book. I was swept away to Stanford and I met the oncologist who saved my life. And when I went into the cancer center, I couldn't breathe. I just sort of thought I was going to just pass out. It was like, this was the defining moment of the rest of my life. And my friends and family soon arrived at the bedside. They all lived in California, so they were all there very quickly. And it seemed to me that every medical student, every oncologist, their fellows, seemingly every person in the Western world was probing me and poking at me to determine what was going on with me. It was not so nice. But at about 8:30 that night, this man walked into my room and in a very brash and unpleasant way, I said, "And who might you be?" And he looked a lot like Santa Claus. But, I have to say, I was poked and probed by a bunch of strangers all day. So seeing this guy look like Santa Claus, like, oh my God. And then he said, I'm your doctor. And I went, phew. Okay. That began what I call the most incredible relationship in my world. And he dismissed all these people who were in a corner sharpening their scalpels, it looked like to me, and said, Nancy's too sick for surgery. We're starting chemo right now. And that was pretty scary. So, and then he said, key to my whole life, yours is a bleak diagnosis, and you have a very challenging prognosis. I think I can help you, and I am with you. And everyone in the room heard those words, and there was a big sigh and a lot of tears. And those 4 words for me became the most important words in my life. They changed my whole world. I am with you. And he said something else that still blows my mind. He said, when your friends and family go home and you think about today and you're overwhelmed, please call me. Here's my home phone number. That was a wow. Okay. And I did call him. I called him at 2:30 in the morning. I called the man. And he was as kind and caring in that phone conversation as he has been throughout my cancer experience. He's honest. He's available. He's just a real human being. He cared about my emotional well-being. I wish everyone had the same trusting relationship with their oncologist that I was blessed to have. And he saved my life. He saved my life. And I trusted him. I was never felt alone. I am with you. Just said it all. And I think the trust with him opened up, let me turn this up, all kinds of possibilities. It just opened my heart. There was something about that. And then I was totally fortunate to just glom on to the generosity of strangers, the wonderful, compassionate, and sensitive nurses in the infusion room. I called them the angels in my midst. And to other patients who rooted for one another and who really cared about each other. I always think that between cancer patients, there's an immediate intimacy that it's more than we're in a club we don't want to belong to. It's like we understand each other instantly. And I found that to be so true, and it guided me in my work. And I had this wonderful A-team they call themselves Nancy's A-team, who held my hand and walked the walk and was always there. So that's the beginning. That was the beginning of my story, which a great foundation of being at Stanford, being with this particular oncologist, having support of my family and friends. And I made a decision in those early days that nobody should ever go through cancer alone.
You said the trust was such a key piece of your relationship with your oncologist, and it opened up a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that a little bit, because that's really interesting. I think so often medicines become mechanistic, and that human element really matters.
The human element, I think I think healing is about relationship in large part. And I, as a psychologist, I work with many, many, many cancer patients, and many, many, many of these people have said to me they don't like their doctors. They don't tell their doctors the truth. They don't take their meds because they can't afford them, and they never tell their doctors. They do things their doctors tell them not to do. And I went, if you don't have that kind of relationship with the man or the man or woman who ultimately has power over the rest of your life in healing you, go find someone you trust. Just do it. It just takes so much off of the pressure and the stress and what did I tell him last time? Did I tell him I'm taking mistletoe, or didn't I tell him? Right. Oh, I forgot to tell him I'm still taking hormones, although I have a gynecological cancer. There's just so many ways that it just feels so good to have, in all our relationships, we know what that means. But I just feel like what I was blessed with was just this opening, this I appreciate it. I loved that these people were so committed to my healing, and therefore I was too. It just was an easy path to take because they showed it.
I think in so many ways you were in the right place at the right time. You met Rachel Naomi
Uh,
Is it Riemann or Remen? How does she say her
Remen,
last name? Remen. I
Remen.
mean, wow, what an incredible person to have
Oh my
cross your
God,
path.
she was amazing. I first met her. I'd read her books. Do you have her books? Do you know what?
I do, yeah.
Okay. The Kitchen Table Wisdom.
Mhm.
Everybody should own that book. And My Grandfather's Blessings. So she was teaching a course for continuing education hours, which I was required to take a lot of. And I decided to be a better psychologist if I took her class. So, and she's elegant, she's eloquent, she's just a remarkable human being. She's lived with Crohn's. I think she was 16 years old, and she's now 78, maybe 80. She was a professor at UC San Francisco, pediatrician who worked a lot with. She did all kinds of fabulous projects. She started the Commonweal Retreat, which is in Bolinas, California, for cancer patients. She started a thing called the Healer's Art to teach doctors how to be human beings and to really give them that sort of emotional confidence that they could really deal with that stuff with their patients. Anyway, so she was going to be my CEU teacher, except 5 seconds into this training, I realized that I wasn't there for that. I realized I was there to become much more in connection with my own cancer, to really define my relationship to my disease. Because I was reading about everybody else, but I hadn't ever put into words what it was, how I was going to address it, what language I was going to use to speak of it, how I wanted to live with it. And I think what she helped me to do is learn how to live with cancer. And we talked a lot about the holding possibilities, holding the possibility that I was going to make it, holding the possibility that this treatment was going to work. We talked about finding my courage, encouraging my courage, which is a wonderful concept to think. In working with other people, how do I encourage their courage? And is that something you're born with, or is that something you cultivate? How do you strengthen that feeling? We talked about the will to live. And I had to really look at that. And I think we all need to really look at that. Like, where does that come from? Is it based on, for me, a lot of it was that I have a child and he has children and I wanted to see them grow up. And so that was motivating me. Or for every individual, it's very individualized, like where does it come from? And
What do you think are some of the common elements of will to live?
what is the common element?
What are some of the common elements? Yeah.
Well, I think it comes out to be all kind of crazy what I'm going to say, but it's an orientation. Are you going towards life or are you going away from life? Are you eating food that is towards living? Are you eating food, what are the choices you make? She talks about it, and I wrote a book. She's one of the co-authors in the book. It's just about the blades of grass coming through the cement in the New York sidewalk, and like how they're just pushing up because they're demonstrating the will to live. And I look at little blades of grass and I look at them differently than I ever looked at them before. But
courage is such an interesting concept. I have come to believe that courage and fear are diametrically opposed, and yet you have to have fear. You have to experience fear to experience courage.
Let me go with that through.
Courage and fear are
Okay.
diametrically opposed, okay?
Yes.
But you have to experience fear in order to experience courage.
Aha. Interesting. Okay. You have to. Well, because your courage is over is trying to overpower the fear. I think under fear, sometimes you find a lot of anger too.
Oh, that's a good point.
And under anger, you find a lot of fear. I think those two go together. So it might make it a little more complicated for what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to show much courage in your daily life unless you're trying to overpower something, right?
Or unless you're trying to evolve. I think trying to evolve takes courage
Yeah.
because you have to put yourself in a place of discomfort. And that is something that most of us shy away from.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? Cancer is discomfort.
Oh, very much so.
It's a lot of discomfort. And I remember when I was living in Mill Valley, a newspaper was giving me an award, and they called it the Courage Award. And I was sort of flabbergasted, like, where in the world did they come up with that one, for me? So I spent a good deal of time meditating on courage and reading about courage and what other people had said about courage. When it's an incredible, and then I think that then I put it together, encourage is encouraging courage. So.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, after all this, you put together a most remarkable organization called Nancy's List. Tell people a little bit about it.
Well, it's a project and it just keeps morphing into something else. And when I started this, it was because during many, many, many visits to the infusion room at Stanford, because I'm a psychologist and I like to talk to people, I started talking to people and asking them to tell me their stories. And it was beyond discomfort when I heard not that people were talking so much about living and dying, but they were talking about not having the money to live and the money to get through cancer and the money to pay the medical bills or to pay for food on the table versus their medications. And they talked more about the money than they talked about dying. And that just, that was unacceptable to me, that people in this country do not have the funds to get through this or worry about the funds. And they don't know that they have options about where to get the funds. And I think it really hit me over the head when one man said to me in one of those discussions that I'm considering suicide because I'm a financial burden to my family. And I'm an old hippie, I couldn't stand that. So I heard that and I said to myself, if I get through this, and I know I'm going to find the money and I'm going to make that information, whatever resources I find, accessible to everyone who's living with cancer and to those who are healing, who are in the healing professions. So when I got through most of my treatment, I started doing research about where's the money and found an incredible amount of extraordinarily generous corporations, foundations, blah, 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 that would help with all kinds of financial needs and to eliminate the stress of some of this. And I started doing research, and I started a nonprofit in 2006 and set up Nancy's List as really all it was going to be is a financial listing. That didn't last for long. So, and then I broke it down into different categories that I thought were relevant, that were going to specific populations, for example, African Americans, Asian Americans, LGBT, children, Latinas, Native Americans, teens and young adults. I went into camps, which are one of my favorite things for kids who are living with cancer or kids who love someone who has cancer. And there's phenomenal camps around this country. I don't know how many can open this summer, but they are extraordinary. And the dedication of the people who are running them, oh well. Co-pays, health insurance, medical expenses, living expenses, legal resources, free lodging when you're going to treatment in hospitals, medication assistance, big thing, retreats for adults, scholarships for kids who have had cancer or who have a parent who had cancer, transportation and travel, which is another totally generous group of people who will take you in their private planes to take you wherever you need to go to get well. And then I break it down by types of cancer for every different diagnosis, and then wish fulfillment organizations for kids and adults. So that's that's a lot of work, but it's really relevant. And I think that people often call it financial toxicity, which is a term I actually don't like. I would like to say there are solutions to this problem. And I also put in my personal experience and others who give tips to how to deal with this crisis, that you can negotiate almost anything with the medical world about cancer. Like I had to negotiate my bill at Stanford, which was phenomenally huge. And I said, I just don't have any more. I've already done everything I can. And within 15 minutes, I was told I would never get another bill from Stanford. And I was talking in the hundreds of thousands of, it was huge. And I've worked with patients who walk in to my office with a huge bill for a kind of a minor cancer treatment. And she's crying her eyes out and said, I don't have the money. I have to pay. I don't have the money. And I said, okay, let's just make a deal. Go back over there, say, I don't have the money. Same thing you just said to me. And say, and I know I'm responsible, and I will pay you $5 every month for the rest of my life. And much to our delight, UCSF accepted that, thought it was very creative. And I just want to put it out there. We can negotiate that. There are free meds all over the place for you. Just go look at the website, get the key names, and go call them. Don't wait, because the stress of financial burden is huge, and it gets in the way of healing. And I know that's true. And I want to help people have the money, get through these resources, even have some wonderful perks like free retreats for women to go fly fishing in Colorado. Right? It's a great statement to our humanity.
And we need those statements to our humanity. The cost of treatment is absolutely out of control. The cost of insurance is out of control.
Right.
It costs me $20,000 a year to have insurance and pay my deductible.
That's wrong. That's totally wrong.
It's nuts. It's just absolutely nuts. And I don't have the solution, but I think that the resources you've put together are just amazing and incredibly helppful. And it requires somebody to you have to agitate for yourself.
You have to advocate, and people need to know what's out there. There's so many phenomenal organizations that will help you, and we just don't know that because we're not, nobody told me there was a financial advisor at Stanford. Nobody even mentioned that. And I went, how am I going to do this? And the fear is if you can't afford it, you can't get the treatment. That's the big fear, and that's what we put out. So,
or you get the treatment and you bankrupt yourself.
People call me all the time and say, what can I do? I live in blah, blah, blah. And can you help me find something right there? So that's been a big part of what I'm committed to. It's like, I know this is an issue that doesn't have to exist. And I know that, we have a president now whose child was affected by cancer. So maybe we'll get more action out of this administration as far as really helping cut the cost. Because the bottom line is it gets in the way of healing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does. And healing's an interesting topic in and of itself. There are so many levels of healing that need to occur, and they need to occur over really long periods of time. I think a lot of people get into they get a cancer diagnosis, they get through treatment. Now what?
Now what is the big what? Right. Because, we all who've gone through this wicked disease know that we're all scared shitless. Oops. About recurrence. And when I laughingly say, but I mean it, like if you're out of treatment, your friends think you must be fine. right? And I make a joke and it's just say the tuna casserole stop coming, and your group of friends move on to somebody else who needs help. But you're left with a lot of emotional stuff to deal with, a lot of just a lot. And so I think that it's not the end. It may be the opening to perhaps, and my greatest idea of transformation, about you've been through a trauma and it's time to heal the trauma. And where do we go from here? My oncologist was magic man in my life, of course, but he said one thing to me. He said early on, if you're on antidepressants, double them. If you're not on them, get on them, because this is going to be a rocky road and you're going to need all the support in the world. And then he said, and find yourself a psychologist, preferably one who has survived cancer. And I just think, why doesn't everybody say that to their patients? Why doesn't everybody address the emotional things that are going to go on, whether you're in treatment, or definitely they're going to go on in post-treatment?
Now, earlier you said, you mentioned there's a continuum of life and death, and the fear of recurrence kind of comes up, and you ask yourself, where am I on that continuum? I mean, where am I today? Today, I might be absolutely convinced I'm going to live no matter what. Everything will be great. Tomorrow, I might not be feeling so positive.
Well, you know what? I play a little mind tricks every now and then, which get me through the day. But one of the things that I've done with patients, and I call them clients, but they're cancer patients, is acting as if, like, where are you on the courage continuum, let's say? How much courage do you feel you have today? And they'll say, 2. And I said, okay, how would your day be different if we upped it to 4? Okay, so this then little conversation, then it's, okay, let's just breathe a little bit, and then let's pretend it's 4. What is that? How does that feel different than 2? You like that feeling? Okay, let's go to 6. And play with these things and act as if you're at 6.
That's powerful.
It's very strong. It's very strong, because you can do it. You can do it with almost everything that I can think of. It was like, how comfortable are you applying for a job? 0. Okay, let's up it. What's it going to feel like? What do you feel in your body? What do you feel all over? But it's, it's pretend, but it's a powerful pretend.
Well, a placebo is pretend, but a placebo can be awfully powerful.
And this is I think this is this requires something else that a placebo may not. It requires you to do the action of amping it up inside yourself and feeling how you're amping it up, and where do you go with that? And I think that it's a tool we can use in many different ways in our lives, but it's like, sometimes when you act as if, you own it. Just hang out today, pretend you're at a 6, see what happens. And I think that's also what Rachel talked about, holding on to possibility. How do you encourage possibility?
Well, and I think our minds are incredibly powerful.
Yes.
We do not give ourselves enough credit for the power of our minds.
Right.
And we really have a choice. We have a choice in terms of what we think, how we approach things,
Mm-hmm.
what truths we choose to believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go back to Candace Pert and others, they showed without doubt there is a mind-body connection.
Yeah. And I think that, we go back to the will to live when you think of the mind-body connection. And some people I know and work with have that will. And some people say, it must be my turn to go, And I've discussed this with so many people who are living with cancer. Like, what is it? And what matters to you? What opportunities are you willing to fight for? I don't like the language of fighting and warriors and all that stuff. I'm not real good at all that stuff. But, I think we need to take advantage of the fact that our minds are so strong in governing our bodies. And we need to learn more about how each of us operates uh, to maximize the potential of our body to heal.
And healing is a long-term endeavor. It doesn't happen magically a month after treatment or anything like that.
No, because I think the treatment thing is so, it's so, it's so. But you have to sort of sit back and you revisit it in some way. Like what was that about? And what were they all running around doing all this crazy stuff, and I just had no idea what they were concerned about. Just all kinds of things happen, and you get flashbacks. I think people need to understand that cancer is trauma, and with trauma comes a huge amount of emotional shifts. Like sometimes you might be completely flooded with emotions, out of control. And then sometimes you go numb. And some people are rapid cyclers between those two things and feel completely out of control of either one. So, I often say with people, like, get thee to a trauma specialist or somebody who really understands that. EMDR is really effective sometimes for people. Hypnosis is, there are all kinds of sort of out there stuff that can kind of balance your emotional state that in many cases is really needed. Because then, it's not just you're out of treatment. You got to sort of re-navigate all your relationships with everybody.
Yes.
And oftentimes those relationships are put at risk during cancer.
Now, cancer really changed your life. I mean, it set it all. You went off on a path you never could have expected. If you could rewrite your story, would you?
No, I actually am happier having had cancer than I was before. I don't know what parts I would rewrite. It was dramatic. I mean, I have to say there was a lot of extra drama going on, and I was sick a lot. But I just knew I could do it. I just felt like I could do it, and I wanted to. And I have to say, I don't know if I have to say it at all. My path changed. I fell in love while I had tubes running out of me and bald head and all kinds of stuff with this guy from Texas, of all things, and I'm a California kid. I mean, I don't even know about Texas, right? So that added a dimension to it too, to be loved, not because of to be loved, and maybe because I was vulnerable, or maybe because, I certainly didn't look so attractive, but anyway, that added another dimension. And I think that was also that my heart was wide open to that. That's if I could make that happen for people, just opening their heart to let this stuff in, because there's some beautiful blessings to be had from the people that we meet along this cancer path.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. You can subscribe to our free podcast at www.bumpintheroad.us or become a premium member to hear the full conversation. Just go to www.bumpintheroad.us for more information and to sign up.